So hi everyone, my name is Gianluca Riglietti and I work for the Business Continuity Institute where I manage the research function. Thank you for staying for this last bit of this stream. So today I will be talking to you about our Cyber Resilience Report that we published in 2017. This is a report about cyber resilience and the impact of and the role of business continuity arrangements within cyber resilience. It's one of our most popular reports, and of course it's an opportunity for me as well here to talk to you about our report from a business continuity point of view and sort of measure it against an expert audience in a different discipline such as cybersecurity that we are trying to reach from the Business Continuity Institute. So looking at today's agenda, which will follow basically the structure of the report, we will look at cyber disruptions in the last 12 months since the publication of the report. We will look at how organizations build cyber resilience, and then I will try to share some insights that we derived from the report. So just a few headlines to give you a sense of what the report is about. So we found out that around 64% of organizations suffered at least one breach in the previous 12 months. We found out what the top drivers for disruption are. So social engineering and phishing, malware, but also spear phishing. And then, of course, I will elaborate on more of these drivers throughout my presentation. And then we found out that 13% of organizations suffered the loss of at least 250,000 euros. We looked at the time of response, which sort of links with what the previous presentation was saying, previous presenters were saying. 16% of organizations take 4 or more hours to respond to a cyber incident since the time of its discovery. And then we looked at, of course, the uptake of business continuity arrangements, and we found out that 87% of organizations have business continuity arrangements in place to deal with cybersecurity incidents. So just to give you a sense of the sample that we got for this report, I'm quite happy that we got 734 professionals that responded to this survey. And you know that people are not always very inclined to share information about cybersecurity incidents because of a reputational point of view, but of course we're very happy that we managed to get so many professionals to take part in this survey. They were from 69 different countries. Their functional roles mainly were business continuity, risk management, information security, and disaster recovery. The top industries were finance and insurance, professional services, IT and communications, but also the public sector and defense. We got about 25% of small and medium enterprises as well, and pretty much we covered every single continent in terms of geographical spread. So, looking at the frequency of cyber disruptions, I hinted at this graph in the headlines. So, nearly 2 out of 3 organizations, more than 2 out of 3 organizations, suffered at least one incident in the last 12 months. But what was interesting to me looking at this graph was that black bit at the end, that 15%, of professionals that said, I don't know. We did some segmentation and we looked into who these people were, what their job description is, because of course we asked that as well. And that included people from business continuity, risk management, but also cybersecurity and information security. And 15%, it might not look that much, but it's nearly 1 in 6. So it means that nearly 1 in 6 professionals that might come from also cybersecurity don't know whether the organizations have suffered a breach or not. And we're very thankful because they were very honest when they gave this answer. But of course, it's quite troubling. And of course, you ask you might wonder if they don't know, then who does? So there is we can see a bit of an awareness issue when it comes to cybersecurity incidents within an organization. We're about to publish the 2018 version of this, and I'll give you a little spoiler alert, but there isn't a lot of improvement in this area. So it is something, definitely something that organizations need to work at. Drivers of cyber disruptions. This is, of course, where you see a lot of names that always make the headlines when it comes to cybersecurity. As I said, the top 3 drivers for cyber disruption are phishing and social engineering, malware, and then you've got spear phishing. If you're wondering why ransomware is only in 6th place, it's because this survey took place shortly before the WannaCry incident happened. If we had run this survey after that incident, probably ransomware would have been in the top 3. And of course, this year we saw that there's been an increase in number of professionals that ranked ransomware as one of the top 3 cyber disruptions. So what I want to highlight here in this graph is, first of all, that there is a big concern in terms of human error. And you see that the top 3 threats include spear phishing and phishing and social engineering. And also, I want to stress that most of these attack vectors, they don't happen separately, because of course, malware and phishing and social engineering are usually 2 parts of the same attack. So you would deliver malicious code through phishing or social engineering or spear phishing. But also through out-of-date software. If you look at the WannaCry incident, it was delivered through an exploit. They used unpatched systems to basically spread the ransomware. So, and one other piece of information that is very interesting about this is that we segmented the data according to industry sector, and we looked at the health and social care professionals that answered this survey. And when we segment the data according to health and social care professionals, ransomware jumps up to 3rd place, which means that before the WannaCry incident happened, that took a lot of people by surprise, people in the industry already knew that ransomware was going to be a big threat. And this tells you something perhaps about doing the right risk assessments and knowing your organizations and asking and finding out what the main threats are and what their impact could be before they actually they actually occur. So looking at ransomware, we decided to do some further research and look at similar incidents that happened to hospitals through, of course, ransomware. And we decided to look at a case study. And we looked, of course, at other similar incidents, and we found out that exactly pretty much 12 months before the WannaCry incident happened, the same type of attack had been carried out against other hospitals, a few in Germany, a few in the US, one in the US that ended up paying $17,000 in ransom. And this is just to say that if, performing research and performing a proper risk assessment can help detect threats before they land on your door, and of course you can be more prepared and more organized. And looking at new threats, we decided to look at some social media attacks. And we found out this new type of social media attack, which is called anger phishing. It's got a funny name, but basically what it is about is attackers, criminals, impersonating a company and getting in between a customer and a company talking on social media. So say you're complaining about your bank and you're really angry, you go on Facebook and you write to your bank and you wait for them to answer. And these guys get in the middle with an account that has a similar name to your bank, and they respond to you and they say, oh, we're really sorry, but if you want to get your money back, just click here. And of course, a lot of people don't care about looking at the blue little symbol that says that that's not the real account. They would just click and then either download malicious code or give out their credentials. So this is another, more sophisticated piece of social engineering that is happening already. It's happened already. People have been frauded through this kind of attack, believe it or not. And this, leads to the point to a point that I want to make, which is about building the right culture of safety and of cybersecurity. And that's where business continuity can play a decisive role. Because, of course, while the technical guys are really good at implementing the right systems, there is also a human side to cybersecurity. And business continuity through proper risk assessments and organizational processes, awareness and training and exercises can help and complement their technical counterparts. So looking at the, of course, we looked at frauds, and now we're looking at the costs of cyber disruptions. So we said that 13% of organizations suffered 250,000 euros worth of losses in the previous 12 months. This is, if you think that a quarter of this sample is made of SMEs, that of course they have a lower revenue than larger companies. 250,000 euros lost over the course of a year can be quite deadly. There have been cases where cyber attacks have led companies to bankruptcy. It's happened to a couple of companies, one in South Korea last year and another one in Japan a few years before. They were mainly cryptocurrency related companies, but they were forced to declare bankruptcy after a cyber attack. So this is quite interesting to see what kind of impact or financial impact a cyber attack can have. And of course, looking at what kind of results we got for this year's report, this has got even worse. Of course, the report is coming out soon, so I won't tell, but the financial losses have increased. Top management commitment. This is a piece of good news that comes out of this report. So it increased because, of course, we published the first cyber resilience report in 2016, and we saw that top management commitment increased from 55% to 60%. Of course, then how the resources that come from top management are utilized and handled within an organization, that's another story. You might have a very big budget, but of course, if you don't apply it properly, you might still suffer a lot of breaches. There was a case with NASA, the American Space Agency. They said that they of course had huge budgets dedicated to cybersecurity, but because there were no clear role and responsibilities and there was no communications, they still kept getting breached over and over. And to the point that they realized that the problem with their preparedness wasn't in terms of quantity of resources, but it was in terms of quality of administration of those resources. So you see that top management is great, but you need to use it wisely. And then we come to the uptake of business continuity arrangements. So this went up from people that used business continuity arrangements within their cyber resilience framework went up from 75% to 87% last year, which shows that organizations are definitely integrating, embedding business continuity within their cyber resilience strategies. This is a figure that has been maintained consistent in this year's report as well, where we also asked what kind of benefits there are to having a business continuity management system within your cyber resilience strategy, and responses ranged from mitigating an attack to preventing an attack to having a better awareness and diminishing reputational damage as well. Of course, this is a more in-depth graph still related to cyber resilience arrangements. Of course, as 75% of organizations have antivirus software applications related to cyber resilience strategies, because of course you need an antivirus software. But then it's interesting that 58%, so it's nearly 60%, have a BCM program as well. So this sort of like reinforces what the previous graph showed, which is business continuity arrangements do play a role in cyber resilience strategies. Then, of course, the question is, how well do the IT functions communicate with the business continuity ones or other functions within an organization? And of course, that's a really important point, and it's worth definitely something worth researching about. And then we looked at response time to cyber disruptions. So what I want to stress in this graph is the 16% that said that they take 4 hours or more to respond to an incident since they discover it. Now, of course, there isn't an ideal time to respond to a cyber incident. Larger organizations might require longer than smaller organizations. It's very subjective. Some industry research literature points out that the ideal talks about the golden hour, saying that usually within an hour you should be responding to a cyber attack after its discovery to minimize losses. And of course, the more you reduce your so-called dwell time, so from the time of infection to the time that the malware is ineffective, the more you are likely to minimize your losses. And 16%, so quite a big number of organizations taking 4 hours or more is quite worrying, and it shows a problem of in terms of preparedness, perhaps. And then we asked the respondents to elaborate on their answers a little bit, so to talk a little bit more about it. And they said business continuity strategies must take all potential cybersecurity events into account. Business continuity programs are looked at as strategic assets. Business continuity get activated when cybersecurity incidents happen, and so on and so forth. So this is more of an insight into how you actually combine the business continuity function with the cyber resilience one. And then we had a question as well about GDPR arrangements. This is more, of course, about data privacy and information security, but given the time at which we ran the survey, we felt like that it was appropriate to just have a question about GDPR. And we saw that most organizations, 57%, rely on internal teams to manage new regulations such as GDPR. Of course, it's interesting that 15% said that they have no particular arrangements in place, and another 15% said that they don't know. Hopefully, they've changed their minds about that. But again, this is just a different aspect to cyber resilience, and it concerns more information security. But we felt like it would have been interesting to look at this as well. So, to look at the key takeaways from this presentation, business continuity should collaborate and engage with their cyber information security counterparts. The human factor plays a decisive role, and the main vector for attacks are, of course, phishing, spear phishing, social engineering. So they include the human factor. They entail human factor. And then, of course, legislative and regulatory changes are expected to drive cyber resilience to heavily influence efforts in this area. What I want to leave you with is just a slide on future challenges. And the first one is shortage of skilled professionals in cybersecurity. It was very interesting to look at some of the previous discussions about recruiting cybersecurity staff and traineeships and degrees, and of course how hard it is to get qualified staff to work in cybersecurity. From another report that we published, which is the Horizon Scan, it basically talks about general business threats. In the long range, professionals see cybersecurity as the main concern and lack of skilled employees as the second main concern in the next 5 years. And probably these are connected, and it was really interesting to see what kind of efforts are being made in order to train more skilled employees in the field of cybersecurity. And then, of course, increased vulnerabilities due to higher internet connectivity through the Internet of Things devices that are meant to probably double or triple in the next few years. Combined and coordinated cyber attacks, the mix between physical and cyber attacks. Of course, if you look at the ransomware attacks that happened in the last year, you can see what kind of physical impact a cyber attack can already have. Secondary effects of cyber attacks, this is connected with it. Building a cyber resilience culture, and of course keeping up with new legislation. And that's all it might be. Thank you.
That's very good, very thorough. Do you have any questions from the floor, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi there. It's Roy Harrow from IBM. I really liked the presentation. I might have missed something, but when you were talking about the controls that people put in place to help mitigate the risks, did you touch upon things like dress rehearsals and tabletop exercises and those sorts of things that people might do to help not necessarily put a preventative control in place, but perhaps to help make sure that when something bad happens, they're better prepared?
Yeah, that's the one slide that I didn't include in this presentation, so sorry about that. But yeah, we had some stats about that, and basically we found out that professionals usually, organizations use training, exercises, penetration tests. Penetration tests are the main ones, and then you've got training and exercising as well. So that would be the main ways to validate cyber resilience arrangements.
Okay, and were you looking at whether or not those sorts of preparations were deemed to be useful?
Um,
Was that too hard?
We didn't include that question in last year's survey, but that's definitely something that we should do. Because last year we only asked about business continuity arrangements, the uptake, and then this year we asked about whether that was useful or not. So this actually is a good follow-up for that question. And this is great because whenever I talk to people that are not from business continuity, they give me amazing suggestions for next year's survey. So I'll definitely ask the question for next year. Thanks.
Any other questions? It was a great presentation. It was packed full of information, which is what, when you come to these sorts of things, you're always trying to get at. So it had plenty of stats in there. I think it's going to be one of the most downloaded presentations after we've been through the day. But unless anyone else had any more questions, we're all done. Gianluca, thank you so much for coming.
No worries.
Cheers.